to the upkeep. This time we're doing a deck tech on a Pauper Online Mono Red Burn deck. I've been running this one for a while. It is a very inexpensive deck. It's thrown together out of almost completely bulk cards. The only card that you might want to add to it, which is not here at the moment in my opinion, is a Pyroblast, or four Pyroblasts maybe, in the sideboard over here. Very good when you're playing up against the blue decks. Unfortunately, they run about $5 each at the moment for a common. So I don't have them in the deck right now. Let me just take you through here real quick. The idea of this deck obviously is to simply burn them in the face, hit them very quickly. It's got every way possible to do 3 damage for only 1 mana, and then it continues to have other ways to burn as well, some that cost 0 mana even. And the hopeful idea when running this deck is that it's turn 1 hit them for 3, turn 2 hit them for 6, turn 3 hit them for 9, they're now at 2 life left. In practice it doesn't always play out that way. It's actually very similar to the modern burn decks that are fairly effective, with obviously just a few changes. So first off here you'll see we're running 18 mountains. Some decks of these run even a little fewer, but I've found enough issues with 18 sometimes not getting 2 in an opening hand that I really don't want to go lower than that. So in our 1-drop, you'll notice we have our mana curve is more of a mana slope here. So we've got a bunch of ways of doing 3 damage for the cost of 1. So we've got Chain Lightning, which is, does 3 damage. Does have the upside or downside depending. If you're playing against someone who is playing red, they can actually pay to copy it, but if they do, you get to copy it back again. You can bounce it back and forth till someone's dead. We have Lava Spike. Does 3 damage, cost 1. It is at sorcery speed. It can also only hit them, but that's usually what you're wanting to do. We have the Ubiquitous Lightning Bolt, 3 damage for 1, and it's an instant. We have Needle Drop in here. Needle Drop is here very specifically to get a little bit of card advantage and card draw. It does, let you draw a card to place itself, and it does do 1 damage. Now, it has the drawback of you have to have done damage to something that turn first. Normally with this deck, this isn't a problem, because the idea is like turn 1 Lightning Bolt, turn 2 Lightning Bolt Needle Drop, and you've gotten an extra card advantage. The problem is that a lot of times I do find I have a Needle Drop or 2 in my hand, and I don't have a way to burn them at the moment. I'm needing to draw a card, and there's just no way for me to do it. I have been considering the idea of basically taking these 4 Needle Drops out and replacing them with Treasure Cruises, and then running a few tap lands to be able to generate blue. But I'm worried about running the tap lands, slowing down the deck a little, and this is a deck that wants to just go very, very fast. I've also got 2 Shard Volleys in here. Shard Volley is another way to do 3 damage for 1, but does involve sacrificing a land. So at the moment I'm only running 2 of them, because while they are very good, you just don't tend to want to use them that much. Especially when we get to what's sitting over in the 6-drop slot, and you'll see why. Actually, let me go ahead and jump over there and I'll show you, because what I've got in the 6-drop slot over here is I have got Fire Blast. And Fire Blast, if you're not familiar, it costs 6 to cast, but you're almost never actually casting it for that. What you do is you're sacrificing 2 mountains, and then it deals 4 damage. This is almost always your final blow. You're trying to take someone out, and the great thing about this is the mountains can be tapped. So you can only have 2 mountains out. You can Lightning Bolt, then sacrifice them to Fire Blast and do 10 damage in 1 turn with only 2 mountains. So it's really powerful. But if it gets countered, or if it's not the killing blow, and then you got rid of 2 mountains, it can be risky. But given that I want to run 4 Fire Blast is why I'm only running 2 Shard Volleys. There's just not that many mountains to use as resources. We have a few other damage spells as well. So we have Rift Bolt. Rift Bolt is another 3 damage for 1 mana, kind of. You'll note it officially costs 3 to cast, but you can suspend it for 1. So this is quite often a turn 1 play. Turn 1, suspend a Rift Bolt. Then turn 2, you start doing shenanigans. You can also start using Rift Bolt along with the Needle Drop so that you can, if for some reason you kept a 1 mountain land but with a Rift Bolt and a Needle Drop in it, you can turn 1 Rift Bolt. Turn 2, the Rift Bolt goes off. Now that they've taken damage, you can cast Needle Drop and try to draw into something. I'm also running 2 copies of Stagger Shock. I'm still not 100% sold on this card. Part of me, would almost consider running another Shard Volley or maybe even something else. I don't know what yet at the moment. But it does 2 damage, and then the next turn it does 2 more automatically. That's the rebound. The spell gets cast again. But it costs 3 mana to cast. You're paying 3 mana to do 4 damage. When you compare that to all of the 1 or 2 mana to do 3 damage spells out there, I haven't really seen the benefit. I've also noticed a problem when playing against decks that are running the various prevent damage, because they do have to worry about running into mono red decks. This makes 2 different turns you have to worry about preventing damage. Now, if they're casting a spell to prevent damage, such as using Dawn Charm, that's okay. It's actually good that this takes 2 turns to do damage to them, because they'd have to have 2 Dawn Charms. But if they bring out something like a Circle of Protection Red, which I've had people do, having it on 2 separate turns doesn't help you that much. It does mean they have to activate the cop on both turns, but if you're trying to push all the damage in on 1 round when you know they can't prevent the damage, having it split up doesn't help. So I'm still a little skeptical on that. I am actually running main deck for Searing Blaze, although this actually becomes one of the most sideboarded out cards. It's great because for 2 red, you're typically casting it with Landfall, and with Landfall it does 3 damage to a player and 3 to a creature, so it's a great way to get rid of a creature and hit them in the face. The problem is you can't cast it unless they have a creature. Now once they have a creature and you cast it, even if they bounce the creature back, it does still trigger off, because it still has a valid target in the player when it resolves. But I've run into a number of decks I've been playing against that aren't running creatures or that run very few creatures, and I end up with a few of these in my hand and not a good time to play it, and so it ends up getting sideboarded out. So it's very good, but I do a little bit worry about whether maybe it should be main decked or not. So I am running 2 of this Curse of the Pierced Heart. Now a number of deck lists like this are running 4 of these. Again, maybe I should get rid of the Stagger Shocks or some of the Searing Blaze in exchange for these. Basically, it's an enchantment. You pay 2, and it does 1 damage to target player every turn. So it's a very slow burn, but you can get a lot of value out of it, because you can pay 2 and have this do 5-6 damage over the course of a match. Obviously, this is very good in the early game. It's not so good late game, so it's a bit of a catch-22 there. Now I am running 2 creatures, well 4 creatures, but 2 types. One is Spark Elemental. Spark Elemental is basically a lightning bolt on a stick. It costs 1. It is a 3/1 Trample Haste Elemental, and at the beginning of the end step, it dies. So you're basically casting this, immediately attacking with it, hoping you make it through. Maybe you kill one of their creatures, maybe you just do damage, and then it's dead. So you're treating it like a lightning bolt. And then I'm also running 4 of Keldon Marauders. Keldon Marauders costs 2, but you get a lot of value out of them. So there's a couple things to note. First of all, they are a 3/3, so if you're able to attack with them and connect, you get a lot of damage in. But when they enter the battlefield, they do 1 damage to the target player, and when they leave the battlefield, they do 1 damage to the target player. So if it comes in, does 1 damage, you hit them for 3, and then it leaves, you get 5 damage out of this, and potentially a blocker for a turn. Now I say for a turn because the Marauders have Vanishing 2, and with Vanishing 2 that means you get 2 time counters on it, each upkeep 1 comes off, when they're gone it dies. So you basically cast this, the next turn you have it you have it as an attacker, and then it goes away. So like I said, the whole goal of this deck is just to cast as many spells as quickly as you can, hitting them in the face, usually kind of ignoring their creatures and not worrying about that you're wanting to focus on doing the damage directly to them and killing them on turn 3 or 4. Sometimes you do have to start worrying about their creatures, of course. Now the sideboard I have, like I said, having a Pyroblast in here would be very good. I'm just simply not running them at the moment. But I'll show you what I am running. So, first of all, I have this Electrickery. Electrickery here, running 3 of them. It costs 1, does 1 damage to a target creature you don't control. Offhand, that's not that good. The real thing you're running it for is to use it in Overload mode. Overload costs 1 and a red, and it does 1 damage to each creature that you don't control. This is extremely good against weenie decks. If there's a deck out there that's bringing as many creatures as possible against you, it's great to be able to do this on turn 3 or turn 4, wipe out their creatures, and continue to hurt them. I talked earlier about decks, specifically white decks usually, that run anti-damage spells. You have to be able to deal with that. If you can't stop them from preventing damage, and they put out a copperhead that they can use every single turn, you've got a problem. So the real solution to this is Flaring Pain. I'm running 4 of them in the sideboard because if you run into a deck like that, you absolutely have to bring all 4 in. The nice thing about this is it costs 2 and it says damage can't be prevented this turn. You can also flash it back for 1. So if you're running 4 of these, you've got 8 different times where you can guarantee that the damage will make it through. I'm running 4 Searing Spears. These could also be Lightning Strikes. They're basically the same thing. It's just 1 and a red to do 3 damage. It's a slightly worse Lightning Bolt. These are usually what gets swapped in for the Searing Blaze if someone's not playing creatures. I've also running 4 of these Molten Rains. The idea was that if someone was specifically, land destruction is always sort of a nice thing. It's annoying to play against, but as the player doing it, it's nice. The idea was if someone's running a bunch of non-basic lands, hey, it's a little expensive, it's 3 mana to destroy the land, but you get 2 damage in the process. What I've found though so far is that not that many decks seem to be running that many non-basics. If they are, they're a 2-color deck and they're running maybe 4, maybe 1 or 2 make it out. Because of that, I've actually yet to sideboard these in, and I might even just take them out of the sideboard eventually. That's the deck at the moment. I would love to hear your feedback on it. Please leave a comment below. Tell me what you think you might add. This deck was put together before Fate Reforged. Is there anything in Fate Reforged that would help this out? Should I get rid of the Stagger Shocks? Should I get rid of the Molten Rains? Let me know what you think. I've had a lot of good experience with this, but I've also, when playing it in tournaments, lost more than my share of times. Thanks for listening in on this Deck Tech. We'll also be posting video or more of playing a few games with this so you can get a good feel for how the deck plays out. And thanks for listening.